welcome to another episode of Unbound, the podcast about breaking what breaks us and remembering what binds us. My name is Kiki Lindenau, and before we begin, I invite you to soften your mind and open your heart. To listen, not to reply, but to connect. And to remember that staying human is a radical act. Welcome, Sarah, to the Unbound podcast. I'm super excited to have you here today. And I would like to ask you to start by introducing yourself a little bit. You've had a very exciting time the last 3 years of your life. So if you want to go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about what you've been doing in the last 3 years.
Sure. So my name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old. And for the past 3.5 years, I've been traveling the world with my daughter. And I started sharing our story on social media, where I basically built a community of mostly women. I think 96% of my followers are women from all around the world who follow me for the life that I'm living. I would say I live a very free life together with my daughter, a life that's decentered from men, and really want to embody that you can do whatever you want, that especially motherhood is nothing that holds you back, but just adds another layer onto your personality. I know what it feels like when you become a mother and you feel like your whole life has changed and you're such a different person. And it feels impossible to get back your spark and to find back the energy to fulfill your dreams. And society likes to shame women for still following their dreams, even when they are mothers, and they like to reduce women to this role. And I really like to show with my content that there is another way, that you don't have to live in a typical family constellation, that you don't have to live a traditional life to be happy, that you can have many hobbies and as many professions as you like, that you can always change, and that ultimately your life is unique to you. I've been sharing that story on social media for the past 3 years, and I have been building my own docu-series where I interview mothers all around the world, which led me to more activism work, and I dig deeper into societal structures and what it is like for women in different parts of the world, because obviously the goal is for all women to live free and happy, and not only for the few who have the privilege to do that. I'm working a lot on that. And yes, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I was just thinking when you were saying that, what are, would you say, the main similarities that you have as a mother from the West with the mothers that you've met all around the world? And what is the difference in both the way that they mother and the way that society expects them to mother, the systems around it, the expectations, kind of all of the construct around it?
I think the biggest similarity is that once you are a mother, you recognize the workload in another mother instantly. I never knew before I became a mother what women who decided to become mothers actually carried, and how fucking amazing they are for what they're doing. And that is something that you recognize instantly in one another. And it doesn't matter where you're from and what circumstances you live in. When I see another mother, I know this woman is a badass and she's been through something.
Can you tell us non-mothers a little bit more about that, as someone who's like, what do they carry? They just stay at home all day and watch the kid. Mm-hmm. What is not true about that?
Yeah, I think it's just knowing how much they carry, not only physically, like actually like carrying the kid, but it's more like the mental load. And I know how hard it is to be pregnant, to give birth, to raise that child, to not sleep for the first 3 years. Obviously, that's exaggerated, but you know what I mean? Like just the exhaustion and all of the load that I see in other women. And for most women, it's also balancing that plus a full-time job on top. And I think that's also one thing that I've seen a lot when I interviewed mothers around the world. Many women around the world, they have to bring their kids to their job. It's not that they bring them to daycare like we do here in Germany, for example, or in the US, or like in most parts in Europe. No, not only do they have to raise their children, they actually have to work and raise their children. And I saw so many women who were selling stuff on markets, on the street, who were running their own restaurants, and their kid was there all the time So it is something that I think many people who are not mothers and who don't have to mother under these circumstances will never understand, that it is not only that you live like the normal life many people live and you already have to do as an adult, right? But it's something more on top that people can't even comprehend because the workload is just so high and it's so constant. It's like always in your mind and you can never really switch off. And I think that's something that really connects me to all mothers in the world, is that I just know how they feel. I just know how hard it is. Honestly, my biggest wish is just for all women to just be happy and free. I try to help mothers whenever I can. Whenever I enter some place and I see a mother struggling with a child, I always have toys or something from my own daughter
Oh, that's sweet.
in my bag. And I always try to entertain kids because I know so many women have done that for me, and I will forever be so grateful for that. And I think that's the similarity of all of us, is that we know what it's like and we have to step in and support each other. And then you also ask, what are the differences? One definitely is that being a mother in the Western world is, it's still hard and the systems are also not helpful, but we're still living very privileged lives. We have access to healthcare, we have daycares, we have different infrastructures in place that make it easier to raise a child. On the other hand, I also see that in other parts of the world where you don't have these infrastructures, the very good thing they have, which is something I wish we had in the Western world, is many of them, they still have the village. So for them, there isn't really the need to have a daycare because the village is intact. And I think that is so much more important than having all the conveniences that we have in our Western world. I think it really boils down to having people around you that support you, that take on your own child, not as a burden, but as part of the family. It's not asking someone for a favor. It's not meeting up for a play date. No, like children, they grow up with the whole family, with the whole community. And that's been the most beautiful thing that I've witnessed abroad, is that in many places the villages are still intact. And that makes me so happy because obviously it takes away a lot of the workload of the mother.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What immediately came to mind with both of these, both have advantages and disadvantages, it sounds like. And it makes me question, like, mothers are literally the providers of life. You're responsible for keeping humanity alive.
Mm-hmm.
Why the hell does the system hate mothers? It should be set up the complete other way around, where mothers are on the pedestal and everyone's like, hey, how can we help you and make your life as pleasant as possible so that you can continue to sustain the human race?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the part I don't understand. And that's why I think like it is so wrong, because we're living in this patriarchal society. It's very different in matriarchal societies, for example, because there it's exactly like that. The mother is seen as like the highest person, and everyone is there to support the mother and to support the vulnerables in the society. Mothers are not giving the credit that they would deserve, because yes, we keep the species alive. And I would love to say it's men too, but it is actually mothers who do most of the care work. There are so many studies that have been done on this, and the care work is usually on women. Politicians are so interested in keeping the species alive. They should be making life a hell of a lot easier for mothers. I don't understand how a country can ask women to have babies when it could either kill you or make you so broke that you can't even afford living anymore. That's why we see the declining birth rates, because women have understood that it is a scam. There is no support system for mothers whatsoever. There is no protection for mothers in case you have an abusive husband. There is no real support network. There is also no village anymore because we're a very individualized society right now. How do you expect women to still give birth to children when it could literally ruin their lives?
Very valid question. I'm wondering, if women suffer so much, then who benefits? And why does the patriarchy need womanhood or motherhood to stay this concept of you're only responsible for your children, that's your role, you don't really get to have any rights? Who benefits from that?
Yeah, I think mostly it benefits just the whole system because the way patriarchy is built, It's obviously man and power, and heritage gets passed on in the male line, male lineage. So if they can keep women at home and pretend that being a mother is the very greatest thing that will ever happen to you, and you have no purpose outside of this role, then obviously the power stays with the man. Not only this, but also kids, it keeps you occupied. It keeps you so exhausted that you never question anything. Because if you have one kid after the next, there is no time for you to ever go to a protest. There is no time for you to actually ask for better rights for change because you're just so occupied. This way, they keep all these violent structures alive. And unfortunately, these violent structures make them a lot of money. The crazy thing is that women who perform care work would be accounted for the third biggest economy in the world.
That's crazy.
If
Wow.
it would be, yeah, if someone would give us money for all the care work that we're doing. And it's not only raising children, it's also taking care of elders and taking care of vulnerable people in general. And that's why they profit so much from it. Because imagine how much money they would have to spend if they wouldn't massively benefit from our unpaid labor. It's a good business model for them, you could say.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. I saw a job ad about this once where a manager pulled the entire team together and was like, we are looking for a new position. It's 24/7. There's no break. You don't get paid. And they were like, is
Yeah.
that legal? You know which video I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly. I've seen it too, and it's crazy. I think many women are getting brainwashed into this role of motherhood. Now I really see a shift happening, and I'm so glad that it's happening, that more and more women actually question if that's what they really want for their lives. Because now many of us have the possibility to actually choose. And our grandmas, they didn't have the chance. It was just what you've done. You had to marry someone, you had to have kids. There was no gap year you could just take. There was no, oh, I'm following my purpose now or whatever. No, it wasn't possible. So I think on the one hand, I'm really glad to see that we have all these choices now. And I think we also carry a big responsibility for the future generations because I would wish that only these women decide to become kids who actually have the support system around them to raise these kids and who actually ask themselves if they really want to have kids, if they really want to be a mother, or if that's just an expectation carried on by all the generations before them. Because I think when we have parents that genuinely want to be parents and have a support system around them who help them raise that kid, the next generation will be off so much better than the past generations.
Mhm. No, I definitely agree with you. It seems like the matrix has been cracked open and women are realizing, as you say, oh, I don't actually have to do that. And that voice that is telling me that's just how it is, that's just how it's always been done, is getting weaker and weaker. And you see a shift with fascism and with sending women back to the kitchen and this whole trad wife thing coming up on social media. It's like a way to direct it back. But you also proposed another alternative. And I want to speak a little bit about that matriarchy. For someone that's never heard that before, they might think that why would that work? That's just the opposite of patriarchy, where you have women at the top that are oppressing men, but that's not at all the case. So I would love you to
Yeah.
explain a little bit what you've learned about matriarchy so far and how that could actually be a feasible system.
People say there has never been an actual matriarchal system before, and people say exactly what you said. Why would matriarchy work? Because it's just women on top, and then they would give you all the reasons how women who have been in position of power also led war and how they've also fucked up and what damage they did. But a matriarchal society, how it is lived in China, in India, like not in the whole country, of course, but in parts, there are still some matriarchal or matrilineal societies in this world. And whenever people say this, my response back is, okay, go and visit them, go see for yourself, because you would see that matriarchal or matrilineal societies, it's not at all about women on top, not at all. And I think people can only understand it this way because we are so accustomed to this patriarchal lens of, in order for the world to function, someone has to dominate, but that is not the case. In matriarchal societies or matrilineal societies, it is centered around community. It is centered around the vulnerable. And it is not women at the top, it's an egalitarian society. It's just that the heritage is passed on through the female. But men are also in the position of power just as much as women. They make mutual agreements. They're much more attuned to their environment, to Earth, which I think we could massively benefit from looking into climate change and how we are currently running this planet to the ground. It's something that has been done for years. Like, this is our origin before the Industrial Revolution even happened and before we started to pass on our lineage, our heritage through the male line. At the very beginning, when we were hunters and gatherers, we were matriarchal societies, we were egalitarian societies. And then people always say, oh, but women have always been staying home. They were always in the cave. No, that's not true. Women were also hunting. There are so many studies who prove different. And I think people can't understand the concept because we're talking about really, really long ago. It's not in our recent past that we've been living this way. Patriarchy is quite the new invention, and we're seeing that it's not working. And people say, oh, yeah, but all the progress that has been done and everything. Yes, obviously, but the progress led to a lot of destruction in the end. And what can we do with all these skyscrapers that we have now if one day we can't breathe the air anymore or we don't have water to drink anymore? Like, all the progress in the world doesn't mean shit if the environment will get so bad on this planet that we can't live here anymore. I think actually these matriarchal societies and reading more about them, and I visited a matriarchal festival last year and spoke to women who are from these matriarchal societies, and I interviewed them and I spoke to researchers on this topic. And to me, it genuinely is the solution because it's something that has a proven track record. It is something that has already been lived, that people are still doing. And when you speak to these people who are actually living in these societies, they are so wise. The women are so supported. And it is such a healthy constellation. And it is much more centered around the community. But at the other point, we're also really connected to the whole world with social media. And just like globalism led to this, that we feel like we're connected to, or we could be potentially connected to the whole world. And I think that's also quite toxic because in the end, I think humans were never meant to be around that many people as we are now. And we definitely thrive in smaller groups. And I think it's so interesting because we can also see this cultural shift happening right now, that you see all these running clubs coming up, like these dinner parties, apps where you can meet strangers in your city, networking, even whatever it is. People are craving connection. And they are craving connection outside of this online universe where you just constantly see what everyone is up to, what everyone is doing. You're just constantly comparing yourself. But people actually crave to have the village back. Obviously, I think it's very hard to return to these matriarchal values in our modern world because many people don't want to give up their privilege of living in this modern world, and I understand it. But I would say I live a pretty matriarchal life, although I'm living also a very modern life, and I think both can coexist. And I think that many women, especially single mothers, would be so much better off if they would start embodying these values and if they would start learning about this, because it is the best thing I've ever found to help me with my workload as a single mother. And it is very simple and you can do it anywhere. You don't have to buy like a homestead and live off grid and just be completely off the system. You can live a very matriarchal life in a city too.
Thank you so much. And I'm really glad that you were able to integrate that into your life. And I love that you're so passionate about this. A huge part of the Unbound podcast is to empower individuals who try to find solutions from the ground. I wanted to give you a little bit of space to tell our listeners about that as the grassroots organization that we're highlighting for this episode.
Thank you. As I said, I've been traveling the world for the past 3 years and I connected a lot with many mothers from all around the world. And I realized that, especially in Western media, their stories have no space whatsoever. You almost never see anything reported on mothers. Generally, headlines are very male-centered, but you barely see how it impacts women, let alone mothers. So I created a docu-series where I went to different places in the world and I interviewed mothers because I wanted to give them a platform where they can speak about their lives, because I think, for one, many women have no idea what being a mother even entails. And then on the other hand, many people in general have no idea what mothers are doing on a daily basis. And I just want to highlight the stories of mothers from all around the world. So whatever is going on in the world, that we have mothers on the ground reporting about how it impacts them, how it impacts their communities. And my hope for this project is that mothers have finally a place where they can express themselves and where they know people will listen, and give them a platform to speak about that.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you're listening to this episode and you feel inspired and you're saying, hey, I want to contribute somehow to bringing matriarchal values back into our society, here's a chance. I'm going to put all of the information in the show notes so that you're going to be able to support Sarah with the work that she's doing. I do have a couple more questions. You were saying that this is a space for mothers to share their voice. Why should non-mothers care?
That's a very good question. I have seen that there's a lot of anti-child and anti-mother sentiment in modern feminist discourse, and I think it's inherently wrong, because mothers are women, and whatever impacts mothers will largely impact women. And I know that many women can't see it that way, because if you are a woman in your 20s living in Germany right now, it is easy not to care about it. But what I always say, whatever they do to mothers, they will eventually do to women in general. If you perform feminism from the lens that you only care about yourself, only if it impacts people who look like you, who are in the same position as you, then you're not a feminist, and then you're doing something inherently wrong, because you need to care about women all around the world. You shouldn't also not only care about mothers, you should care about women with disabilities, and you should care about women in other countries, and you should care about all types of issues in this world, because we're all fighting the same fight in the end, and it's important that we include everyone. Right now, for a large part, feminism only exists because we want women in the workforce, for example. Okay, but what about the mothers? What about the mothers? I have seen how hard it is to get any sort of job as a single mother. We have to keep fighting. We cannot stop here, because this white feminism or westernized feminism, it's not the end goal. There are still so many women being excluded from it. And that's why I think, also, if you do not have kids, you should care about these issues, because they will affect you at one point or another.
Collective liberation, baby. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also something that you said on your social media, which obviously I'm going to link in the show notes as well, about single motherhood and how that is so dangerous to the patriarchy, because it's the only one that decenters men. There's no men involved. Well, in the beginning there is, but then they don't really play a significant role. So I'm thinking, if we want to fight the patriarchy, go and support a single mother. If that's all you can do, if you don't want to go out into the street and fight yourself, then at least support the women who are threatening the system. And so I want to ask you, as a single mom, how can we do that? What is a small step everyone can take today to support moms, single moms around the world, in making their lives easier, and at the same time, that way, fighting the system that is restricting us so much?
I love that question. When I interviewed this renowned matriarchal researcher from Germany, her name is Dr. Heide Gettner-Abendroth, and what she told me is that single mothers should actually lead the change. Single mothers need to come together, and they need to lead the change. They need to dismantle patriarchy, because they are in the position where they can do it. Because we have seen that single motherhood, if you are doing it the individualistic way, it's not working. It's putting so much workload on you. It's not sustainable for anyone. Luckily, I'm friends with so many single mothers now through my whole journey, and not a single one of them was happy when they were parenting completely isolated by themselves. It is not sustainable. Obviously, it's still better than parenting with an abusive husband in your home, but it is not sustainable either way. So I think single mothers, first of all, should come together and help each other out. We need to come together to support each other and to take care of each other when we're sick, And we need to prioritize these bonds. And it's not only helping each other through a life stage, but we have to build this sisterhood of being there for each other, even when the kids are grown up and we technically don't rely on our help anymore. But we just have to normalize centering other women in our lives that become part of our community, that become part of our sisterhood, instead of dating men. Like so many single moms, the first thing they worry about is, oh my God, I will never find a partner again. Fuck, now I'm a single mom. No one will ever want me again. And then they get on this journey of trying to date men again and trying to find a new partner. And it just causes friction. What you should really center is your village, it's a community. It's people around you who will be there for you for thick and thin, and that you will see daily and that you will help out daily. And I think if you can come in as a woman to help a single mother out, for example, if you don't have any kids, you have more energy, you just do it for a few hours, right? You're not with that child all the time. The child benefits from it, the mother benefits from it. And then also the child-free woman benefits from it. Like community benefits everyone because the ones who don't have any kids on their own, they don't feel as lonely. And the ones who have kids, they don't feel as isolated and they get to have a break. Like I said, luckily I have wonderful friends who are basically like my co-parents now and who really stepped up to really help me raise my daughter. And I'm will be forever grateful for that. It is the most amazing feeling to know you have people in your life that aren't even your family, but that you can completely and entirely trust with your child and that help you out and that are not only friends you go out to party with or you, I don't know, do like social activities with, but those are friends that take care of you when you're sick, that are there for you when shit hits the fan and the other way around. So you asked how everyone can support a single mom. I think generally also supporting mothers in general, because I think many moms are married and they feel like single moms because the dad is not helping. So I think one thing everyone can do is to hold men accountable, because I've seen it so many times, women who don't hold men accountable, other men who don't hold men who do shit accountable. When you see injustice, hold these people accountable. Because if no one ever will, nothing will change. So that is a very simple step that you can do every single day. When you see injustice, hold people accountable. And the second thing is that you can try to obviously support the businesses of single mothers or mothers in general. If you have the time, you could volunteer as a nanny, for example, for single mothers. That is something that I would find like super helpful. Become part of someone's community. There's so much small things that you can do. And yeah,
Awesome. And just tell them they're doing a good job.
that too.
Moms need to
Yeah,
hear that a
remind them.
lot.
Yeah, and tell them it's okay to take time for themselves, for example, as
It's
well. You can
important.
often
Yeah.
be to watch the child for an evening so they can feel like a person again. Sometimes you really just need a few hours for yourself to center yourself again, and you return so much happier and so much more fulfilled when you have an actual village. That is something that you could do all the time. Yeah.
Awesome. So everybody pause the podcast, call your mom friend right now and offer to babysit the baby for one night, please. And then come back.
The relationship obviously should be reciprocal. So obviously it's not people who have kids should just dump their kids at their friends' places because they're exhausted. But I think in most cases, if you have good friends, it is the case that you both benefit from helping each other. We all go through different life stages, and I think it's normal that people are going through life stages where they need more help, and then there are stages again where they can give more help.
That was actually a perfect bridge to my last question. I asked this to all of my guests on the podcast, and it's a very subjective answer every time. What does it mean for you to be human?
Ooh. I think spontaneously, I would say what it means to be human for me is to feel connected to other human beings. I think that's the most beautiful part about our human experience, is that we can relate to each other, that we should relate to each other, which is something kids do very naturally. Growing up, they see another child and they run towards that child and they become best friends like this. And for whatever reason, we forget that when we're adults. And I had the most beautiful encounters with strangers, and the only thing we had in common was our shared humanity. I think that really bridges the gap to everything I'm doing and everything I stand for is that I love being human. I love humanity and I want humans to feel happy. We can't have happy human beings if we live in an inherently violent system. I think the easiest thing, the easiest form of activism we can do is to remind ourselves of our shared humanity and to be kinder to each other and to not forget why we're fighting for that. It's because we want to have better futures, we want to have better lives, and we want to be able to dance with strangers in the club and to have this fun and to just live our lives. But in order to do that, we have to fight for a better world too. So yeah, if we remember our shared humanity, we have a common ground on something that we can fight for. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much. You summed it up really, really well in the end there. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming today. Everybody that listened, please go and check out everything that Sarah's doing on Instagram, on her Substack. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm going to send you off with the wish that our last guest gave to you and all of our listeners. Your true purpose is not an external thing. It is a quality of your consciousness. Your impact is putting our consciousness in action. Keep going. The world needs your gift.